In the 2023 presidential election, Peter Obi received 582,454 votes in Lagos State. Bola Tinubu, the man who built his entire political career in Lagos, received 572,606. Peter Obi nearly flipped Tinubu in his own home state, and the majority of those Obi votes came from Igbo residents in Lagos. Let that settle for a moment. The Igbo vote, the vote that everyone calls wasted, nearly flipped the home state of the man who became president. Since 1966, no Igbo person has held the Nigerian presidency, not one. In a democracy of 220 million people, the Southeast, home to 40 million Nigerians, has been shut out of the highest office for nearly 60 years. And yet, every presidential candidate since 1999 has campaigned in the Southeast. Every one of them has made promises to Igbo political leaders. Every one of them has courted, negotiated, and in some cases begged for Igbo endorsement. You do not negotiate for something that has no value. You do not beg for something that cannot move the needle. So here is the question nobody in Nigerian political media has been brave enough to answer directly. If Igbo votes are wasted, who exactly is doing the wasting? The voters or the system designed to make them feel that way? Stay with me, because by the end of this video, the idea that Igbo votes are wasted will seem not just wrong, it will seem like one of the most sophisticated political deceptions in modern Nigerian history. Most channels will give you the headline. Afro News HQ gives you the architecture underneath it. If you have never been here before, subscribe now, because what I am about to show you is the part of this story that Nigeria's political class is hoping you never connect. Section 134 of the 1999 Constitution: to win the Nigerian presidency, a candidate must receive both the highest number of votes nationally and at least 25% of no fewer than 24 states and the FTC. This provision was inserted into the Constitution to prevent any single ethnic or regional bloc from dominating the presidency. It was, in other words, a structural defense against Igbo political dominance, among others. Here is what its designers did not calculate. If no single region can dominate, then every region has leverage. And a region of 40 million people, spread not just across the Southeast, but embedded in Lagos, Abuja, Port Harcourt, Kano, and every commercial city in Nigeria, that region has leverage that goes beyond its 5 states. The diaspora arithmetic, the number most analysts ignore. Conservative estimates place the Igbo population in Lagos State alone at between 2 and 3 million. That is larger than the total population of Ebonyi State. In Abuja, Rivers State, Delta, and parts of the South-South, Igbo residents constitute a significant and reliably mobilized voting bloc. This means that in close elections, and Nigerian presidential elections are always close, the Igbo vote outside the Southeast is not a minority curiosity. It is a swing constituency that can tip states. Now here's a question I want you to hold in your mind throughout this entire video. If the Igbo vote is truly marginal, if it truly cannot move outcomes, why has every presidential candidate since 1999 spent significant campaign resources in the Southeast, knowing they are almost certain to lose it? We will come back to that answer, and when we do, it will change how you understand every election Nigeria has ever held. The constitutional trap was meant to make Igbo votes peripheral. Instead, it made them portable. And a portable vote in a country where elections are decided in swing states is not a wasted vote, it is a currency. The evidence, election by election, what Igbo votes actually did. 1999, the founding transaction. Olusegun Obasanjo was a Yoruba man running on a platform of national reconciliation. He needed to win enough states across all 6 geopolitical zones to satisfy Section 134. the Igbo delivered a percentage of votes for Obasanjo that surprised even his own campaign. In exchange, and this connects to Open Loop 2, a specific understanding about governance inclusion and power rotation was implied if not formalized. Obasanjo won. The expectation was not met. The pattern was set. 2003, 2007, 2011, the years of diminishing returns. In each of these cycles, Southeast political leaders negotiated inclusion deals with the PDP establishment. Federal appointments, infrastructure promises, and committee chairmanships in the National Assembly were the currency. The Igbo vote remained reliably PDP, not because Igbos loved PDP, but because the opposition was not structurally competitive enough to justify defection. This period created what political scientists call a captive vote, a bloc so reliably attached to one party that it loses negotiating power. The Southeast was PDP's most reliable zone, and PDP knew it could be taken for granted. 2015, the year that the captive vote broke free. Goodluck Jonathan, a South-South president with strong Igbo sympathies, ran against Muhammadu Buhari. The Southeast voted overwhelmingly for Jonathan. Jonathan lost. This was the first time the Igbo vote had been on the losing side of a nationally decisive election in a way that was immediately consequential. But here is what most analysts miss. The Southeast's bloc support for Jonathan forced Buhari and the APC to spend enormous political capital countering it. The margin of Jonathan's victory in the Southeast was so large that it nearly closed Buhari's national lead. Without the Southeast delivering those numbers for Jonathan, Buhari's margin would have been comfortable. Instead, it was razor thin. A vote that nearly reverses a national election is not a wasted vote. 2023, the year the Igbo vote built an institution. Peter Obi left PDP, joined the Labour Party, and ran on a platform that galvanized not just Igbos, but young Nigerians across all ethnic groups. The so-called Obidient movement was real, documented, and measurable. Obi received 6,101,533 votes. He finished third nationally. He is described in most post-election commentary as having lost. What that commentary does not say, before 2023, Labour Party had never won a single seat in the National Assembly. After 2023, Labour Party held 35 seats in the House of Representatives and 8 seats in the Senate. The party crossed the threshold for federal recognition and funding. It became, overnight, Nigeria's third largest political force. This is not a loss, this is institution building. Igbo votes in 2023 did not produce a president, they produced a party, and that party will be on the ballot in 2027. Return to the Lagos figure we started with. Obi, 582,454. Tinubu, 572,606. The margin was 9,848. Lagos is Tinubu's political fortress, built over 2 decades as governor and kingmaker. The Igbo diaspora vote in Lagos almost took that fortress. In a country where federal elections are determined partly by state-level outcomes, a near miss in Lagos is not a failure. It is a warning shot that every political strategist in Nigeria heard. The real game: why every candidate secretly needs Igbo permission. The kingmaker dynamic, how it actually works. In Nigerian electoral politics, a swing vote is not a vote that changes its mind between parties. A swing vote is a vote that, when mobilized at scale, can move the 25% threshold in a state from unreachable to achievable. The Igbo diaspora in Lagos, Abuja, Rivers, and Delta states sits in precisely this position. In states where the presidential race is competitive, a concentrated block of 200,000 to 500,000 reliable Igbo voters can mean the difference between hitting the constitutional threshold and falling below it. No presidential campaign manager in Nigeria is unaware of this. The question is not whether the Igbo vote matters. The question is whether Igbo voters know it matters. The economic weapon, the lever politicians fear most. The Igbo commercial network spans every major Nigerian city. Onitsha Mine Market is one of the largest open-air markets in the world. Igbo traders operate significant portions of the commerce in Lagos Island, Kano, Port Harcourt, and Aba. During the IPOB sit-at-home enforcement in 2021 and 2022, economic activity in southeast states dropped measurably on those days. Markets closed, transport stopped. The effect was documented. This is a political instrument. A community that can shut down commercial activity at scale has leverage that goes beyond the ballot box. Political actors who understand this do not antagonize the Igbo commercial network without calculating the cost. Here is the question you should be asking. If the Igbo vote has all of this leverage, the swing arithmetic, the Igbo diaspora, the economic weight, why has the Southeast consistently failed to convert this leverage into concrete political returns? The answer is not that the leverage doesn't exist. The answer is that it has never been deployed in a coordinated, unified way at the moment it would be most decisive. The Igbo vote has always been split between PDP loyalty, Labour enthusiasm, and Abga regionalism at exactly the moment when unity would have changed the outcome. The person who benefits most from that fragmentation is not Peter Obi, it is not Atiku Abubakar. Think carefully about who actually benefits from the Southeast remaining divided. If what I just told you is landing differently than what you expected, drop a comment right now. Tell me where you stood on Igbo votes before this video, because the next section is where this analysis gets uncomfortably precise. The silent stakeholders, actors who never appear on camera. Northern political establishments have a structural interest in a fragmented Southeast. A unified Igbo bloc vote in 2027 would fundamentally alter the electoral mathematics for any northern presidential candidate. Yoruba political calculation around the Igbo vote is equally precise. Lagos-Igbo relations have always been commercially warm and politically tense. The 2023 near miss in Lagos was not forgotten. Yoruba political architects are actively gaming what happens to Lagos if the Igbo diaspora vote fully consolidates behind a single candidate in 2027. The international dimension, Western governments and multilateral institutions that have interests in Nigerian stability watch the Southeast question closely. An election result that is seen as illegitimate by 40 million Igbo Nigerians carries governance and investment risk. This is not abstract. It is factored into diplomatic assessments of Nigerian political stability.
The opposing case stated at its strongest. The counter-argument is not stupid. It goes like this. Votes are a tool for producing representation in government. Igbo votes have not produced a president, have not produced a vice president since Alex Ekwekweme in 1983, and have historically resulted in fewer federal appointments per capita than any other major ethnic group. On that measure, Igbo votes have produced the worst return of any bloc in Nigerian politics. That argument deserves to be taken seriously because the numbers that support it are real. What the argument gets wrong. A vote is wasted only if it produces no political consequence. A vote that builds a party, shifts a national narrative, nearly flips a presidential stronghold, and forces every future candidate to factor in your community's position. That vote produced consequences. They are just not the consequences that fit a simple scoreboard. The Obidient movement of 2023 produced the following documented outcomes. Labour Party's legislative presence, a generational shift in Nigerian political identity, the first serious third-party challenge to the PDP-APC duopoly since 1999, and a proof of concept that a non-ethnic mobilization around a Nigerian candidate is possible. These are not consolation prizes, they are foundational assets for 2027 and beyond. The data point that does not fit the standard narrative, including the narrative I have been building, the Southeast has the lowest number of governors in non-Southeast states of any geopolitical zone. Igbos produce almost no elected officials outside their 5 states, and yet the Southeast has driven more constitutional reform conversation on restructuring, on fiscal federalism, on zoning than any other zone. How is it that a group with almost zero elected representation outside its home states is setting the terms of the national constitutional debate? That is a form of political power that does not show up on any standard scorecard. But it is real, it is documented, and it is the foundation of what is possible in 2027. The 2027 mathematics, why this election is different. As of the current political landscape, both Atiku Abubakar and Peter Obi are expected to run in 2027. If both run, the anti-Tinubu vote splits. Tinubu wins a second term with a reduced but sufficient plurality. The Igbo vote is the single variable that determines which of those two outcomes occurs. If the Southeast consolidates behind one candidate and that candidate is credible nationally, the arithmetic changes. Tinubu's path to 25% in the Southeast disappears. His path through swing states becomes significantly harder. For the first time in Nigerian electoral history, the Igbo vote is not just influencing the election from the margins, it is the decisive variable at the center.
Why candidates campaign in a zone they will not win? The answer is not symbolic, it is mathematical. Presidential candidates campaign in the Southeast not to win it, but to lose it by a small enough margin that they can still hit the 25% constitutional threshold. A candidate who gets 20% in the Southeast hits the threshold. A candidate who gets 8% does not. The difference between those two numbers is not votes, it is legitimacy, it is the presidency. That is why every candidate who wants to sit in Asarok must negotiate with the Southeast, even the ones who have never visited Enugu. The agreement in 1999 was about power rotation. Southeast governors supported Obasanjo on the explicit understanding that a Southeast presidency would be prioritized in the PDP zoning arrangement within 2 terms. Obasanjo served 2 terms. Yaradua followed North. Jonathan followed South-South. The Southeast was never next, it was always deferred. But here is what that history created. It created a Southeast political establishment that knows exactly how the transaction works. They have been on the receiving end of the broken promise often enough to recognize the pattern. In 2027, for the first time, the Southeast has a candidate, Peter Obi, who operates outside the party structures where those broken promises were made. That is new, and it is dangerous to everyone who benefits from the Southeast being perpetually deferred. Igbo votes have never been wasted. They have been used by other people for other people's purposes without adequate return. That is a different problem, and it has a different solution. We started with a number, 9,848, the margin by which Peter Obi did not take Lagos from Tinubu, a number so small it fits in a local government election, a number that represents in concentrated form what Igbo political power looks like when it operates at scale in unfamiliar territory without the machinery of any major party behind it. Imagine that number with organization behind it. Imagine it with a unified Southeast, a coordinated diaspora strategy, and a candidate whose appeal extends beyond ethnicity into a genuine national project. That is not a fantasy. That is the 2027 scenario that every political architect in Abuja is running calculations on right now. The Igbo vote has never been wasted. It has been waiting. You now understand something that most Nigerians watching the news today will never be told, that the most underestimated vote in Nigerian politics is also the most consequential one. What you do with that understanding, whether you share it, argue with it, or act on it, that is how democracies survive their own political class. Afro News HQ, Nigeria deserves better analysis. I will see you in the next one.